Welcome to Do It for the Gram and Enneagram podcast with your host, certified Enneagram coach Milton Stewart, where we do it for the Enneagram, not Instagram. We make moves to improve our lives and those in our community. Today, I am extremely excited because I have an absolutely incredible, amazing person as a guest today on our podcast. Me and this guy met at we met in a Enneagram program, and we were by far definitely the youngest people in our particular position. uh, this man is doing incredible things, and I believe I would say taking the Enneagram into like a new frontier, but actually he's taking it back to where it needs to go in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways. So I want to definitely introduce the audience to a good friend, a good man who's doing incredible work, Ben Campbell. How you doing, man? How you doing?
Doing pretty good today. Thanks for that lovely intro, Milton. I have more energy than I did 30 seconds ago.
So Ben, can you share a little bit about who Ben Campbell is?
Yeah. I suppose I could do that. Well, I'm an Enneagram teacher. That's one way to introduce myself. I have lately been starting to think of myself as a bit of a weird modern day druid. Um, because I spend most of the time that I can out in the wild, and I believe in magic, which I don't think is a very common view these days, but I think it's kind of needed if you look around at what's going on.
Love it.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
keep going. I just love that. Yeah.
Yeah, hmm, there's a lot of things I'm doing and thinking about, but like what the thing at the center of what I'm about, what I'm working toward, whether I'm getting paid or not, like whether it's professional or not, is trying to help modern humans find a way to reconnect with our nature-based roots in a way that is accessible in the context that we're in. So, not just romanticizing how humans used to live and trying to get away from all that we're doing now, but what can we learn from how we used to relate to the earth and to each other? And how do we bring that forward and move ourselves individually and as a civilization into the future in a way that's going to be sustainable, and that's going to help us create a civilization that's nurturing and generative for both ourselves and the planet that we live on, and that is the only home we have.
Mhm. There we go. There we go. So Ben, you do something really incredible. And I remember, so I grew up, I'm an Eagle Scout. I've done that, but I am not, which is interesting. This is another question just popped in my head. I ask later on. I'm not always in nature, like as a person who's connected to the earth should be, to be honest. Right.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I didn't have like just um be like, "Ooh, I need to be in nature," type of thing. I think I've picked up a lot from you, especially at this last retreat that we just did. Can you
Mhm.
share the importance of integrating nature into our daily lives and into like our Enneagram practices? Because this is the frontier, aka where I think you're bringing the community back to that we need to pick back up.
Yeah. 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 I think the biggest hurdle or objection people have is that either I don't have time for nature, or I live in a city, so it's not accessible, or I'm just not interested in hiking or kayaking or hanging out with all the bugs and the other critters out there. It's hot, I could get sunburned. It's not comfortable. And so there seems to be this idea that you're either someone who likes nature and enjoys time in nature and you're kind of a wild oriented person, or you're someone who's not and you're oriented to civilization and shopping and staying indoors and driving and having the comforts of modern life. And that we kind of see those as exclusive. And there can be some, I guess each group has their own version of elitism and thinking that they're doing the correct thing. And I don't really want to bash anybody. I think what we need to find, though, is a way to have a connection with nature on a daily basis in small ways, just to, given how disconnected our lives are structured, at least in Western civilization and American culture, where we have removed ourselves so completely from nature that we no longer need the rhythms of the sun or the weather or anything. We have air conditioning from the moment we wake up to our drive to work to the office building and then the drive home. And then when we're at home and all our food is refrigerated and we can get I can eat mangoes from Mexico or wherever they grow, and I can order something on Amazon and it shows up the next morning. Like we live in a time when things just happen differently, and it's really easy to feel like we're disconnected. Um, and that has some consequences because we no longer pay attention to the energy that's required to actually have these things happen. We don't realize the impact of our everyday choices. Um, we've kind of forgotten like what if you look at how wild animals still live, everything comes down to the energy that I have available to do something. And a lot of wild animals live on the edge of death. It's like if I don't get this particular meal, that's it. And we're fortunate that we don't have to struggle in that way anymore. Um, but we're not aware of the cost of what we're doing. Um, And given that we're facing a climate crisis, which is going to affect all of us, there is no escape from that. I had a friend tell me recently, there's no safe passage through this. Like there's nothing you can do to insulate yourself from this. You can't move, and you can move some places that maybe it'll be a little safer, but you can't escape what's going on. And so we're being asked to confront this and go, okay, how do I move through this? Um, and one simple way that I just try to urge people to do is how can you feel connected in a little way? So it might be with a house plant. It might be the first thing you do in the morning, just step outside or open a window and breathe in air from the outside. Um, that's part of it, just little things. And the the challenging thing that I am trying to bring back into our modern awareness is that we are not on some higher tier of intelligence or awareness than the rest of creation. We're kind of in a period of human, anthropos and whatever the word is, human centric orientation where we think we're the
Mhm.
smartest and it's our role to dominate and control, and nature is just a pile of resources. And that is a really new concept, and it's a really disconnected concept. It's only possible because of the civilization we've created that we can possibly think we're separate. And there are still peoples on Earth who can practice communicating with non-human species, back and forth, back and forth communication. Um, there's so much wisdom that's available to us that we've forgotten we can access. Uh, yeah, I said a lot. I'll pause for a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, bro. No, bro. Like there were so many different points in there. I was like, mm-hmm. Humans. I mean, I feel you on that. Like I'm learning more and more that like we are in a lot of ways like connect. Not only are we connected to the earth and it's a part of us, and we miss that because our civilization. So we don't honor the earth we live, and we consume it without thinking about the resources or the use of it or how we impact it. And you've helped me to grow this consciousness for sure. I think one thing I was thinking of when you spoke as well is there is this almost it's really human, but because we've lost access to these parts of us, like you said, there's things that we can do that is almost like supernatural, right? To it's
Hmm.
all, but I don't think it's supernatural. I think it's just would be if we were connected to our earth and ourselves much more, we would be able to have these parts of us activated. So
Yeah.
or aligned or awakened. um, so you see that as well, right? Can you share a little
Yeah.
bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I can share things I've seen happen at, for example, the Primitive Skills School in Maine, and
Right,
also,
right.
stories from books I've read too. Um, yeah, uh we have powers that we've forgotten we have. Um, there's an example actually in the Wisdom of the Enneagram book by Don Riso and Russ Hudson that talks about an Aboriginal tribe in Australia, and the members of that tribe can detect when if they've sent someone out into the bush and they fall into a hole and break their leg 10 miles out, the people in the village know there's no cell phones or anything. They know that one of their family members has been hurt, and they know in their bodies exactly how to get to them, right? It's just we have that capacity as a species, but it's atrophied because we haven't needed it. If you have a cell phone with a tracking thing, you don't need to know how to find your um, member of your tribe out in the woods. Um, and it's a pretty rarely cultivated skill. So something like that. There's also the fact that we leave energetic signatures everywhere we go. We leave tracks everywhere we go. If you're a master tracker, you could track someone through a city based on the different prints that they leave and the walls they brush up against and reactions of the people that are in their wake. There's all sorts of ways to track someone, physically speaking, if you're a master at that. But you can also track energetically, and we leave these energetic signatures everywhere we go. And if you're tuned into those, you can pick up on them. And again, that's something that's atrophied. I think I talked to you about this when we were in Minnesota together. This idea of a scout bubble,
Hmm.
which is something we practiced at the primitive school. And it's this idea that you can leave behind an impression of your feeling state on a trail somewhere as a bubble. And I went and I did this with a friend of mine walking on a trail. I was supposed to leave a scout bubble for
Hmm.
my friend. And what I did was I conjured up the most itchy feeling I could, like I was being swarmed by bugs. I wasn't actually being swarmed by bugs. Um, but I just manifested this in my whole body, like there are midges and flies, and I'm just like feeling this writhing. I can feel the blood moving through my body and just like rigid intense, like I hate this, frustrated. Had my whole, 3 centers involved in there. And then I took a breath and centered myself, walked down the trail and moved off to the side and watched for my friend to pass down. And he came through in a couple minutes. He's very used to being in the woods. Bugs don't bother him. And he got to the exact place where I did that, and he started smacking himself all over. He didn't know what, like, I could have left anything for him. I could have left an anger bubble or a sad bubble, but I left an itchy bubble. And the second he was there, he started smacking his arms and his legs like he was being attacked. And I was there like, what the, what
Yeah,
was that?
yeah, yeah.
And my
I
teacher
think
said
that's
he does this in Walmart. He did the same thing in Walmart where he told his coworker to, hey, Mark, hang out here and watch this aisle and then let me know what people do. And if he goes to their side of the store, and a few minutes later his friend comes and says, what did you do? Every time someone new walks down that hallway, they stop right in the middle and they look down as if they've dropped something. And my teacher was like, yeah, well, I was feeling like I dropped my glasses there, and I left that bubble there. So people
mm,
stopped and they looked down, which, if you're a scout, you're wanting to set a trap for someone in the woods who's following you.
right.
That's practical.
Mm,
So I don't know how many of
yeah,
our listeners here are going to believe stuff like that, but that's because we're so separated from our capacity.
yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm glad you went there because the more I do my own inner work, and this leads to my next question, the more I start to see and believe things and notice and know things that are much greater than I ever thought. Because I feel like it is it just me? It's probably not just me, but everything that our society teaches us, to me, it's like is the inverse of what's healthy. Like,
Mm,
I mean, you can name anything from the food pyramid down to how we live our lives inside of certain things, what stuff we put on the clothes, the food we put in our bodies. Everything is backwards. It's like,
right.
and
Right.
I mean everything, right?
Drink
My
water
like,
out of plastic bottles because it's
right.
cleaner.
Let's
Yeah.
the medical it's ran by big pharma, ran by companies and corporations that aren't supposed to keep you, that don't heal you, they just keep you on medicine, right? Like, so it's everything is so backwards, bro. Like, becoming conscious, it's crazy. It's like becoming conscious, you have to feel like you're like becoming weird, because in a society that is crazy, for you to be sane, you cannot, I mean, think about it, you
Yeah.
can't you can't look like everyone else when you start to do it. So I'm glad you shared those things because some people listening like, oh, okay. Just let y'all know Milton's on in the same boat. I'm seeing and doing some things, and I've experienced some things that are wow. So my question here is, why is it so important for people who are like lovers of the Enneagram, like the Enneagram, to actually integrate nature into what they're doing with their
Mm.
practices? Why is it so important?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the crux of what I'm trying to offer the Enneagram world is how to rewild the Enneagram. And some people have asked me, why are you calling it rewild instead of wilding the Enneagram? Like, isn't this new? I'm saying, no, it's not, because the Enneagram, we talk about the Enneagram as the bridge between psychology and spirituality, right? That's kind of a common moniker for it. And it's that combination of those two things that makes it so powerful. Having one without the other isn't as useful. Well, all psychology and all spirituality was originally nature based, like all of it, because our entire culture was nature based. Any kind of model of self development or inner work or change or relationship work or mentoring or rites of passage, all of it happened on the land in relationship to the land. Like that is literally how we evolved biologically. And it's only in the past 1% or less of our history as a species that we've had any difference from that. So even though we feel like this is typical and normal and we've grown up with it, and that's true as far as our conditioning goes, maybe our wiring, our cells have a very different they evolved in a very different context. And if we're not accounting for that context in our inner work, we're missing out on some really important dimensions of possibility for ourselves. So if I just want to look at it from what do I get out of it? It's I get to access this whole dimension of what this organism was designed to do and to be that I wouldn't have if I'm not bringing in nature. Um, and on the other side of it, like how does it serve beyond myself? It's well, I am part of the earth and part of the biosphere. And if I am doing my inner work in a context that connects me to nature, if I'm doing this vulnerable work where I'm getting in touch with my heart and my soul and my true wishes, my vocation, all of that in relationship with the earth, it is much more likely that I'm going to find my way into my personal ecological niche in the world, right? If
Mhm.
I'm in communication with the world, I'm able to find that niche. And what I do is going to fulfill me in the greatest way possible. And it's going to be contributing to the health of everything.
Listen, I'm so glad you said that because that leads me to what I was thinking about. And I shared this with you and Chelsea. For people listening, I don't know how I got to this space. Actually, I do if I track back. But I am now, listen, I am a vegan now, or I could say part time vegan sometimes, but part time vegan now. I
Really
drive
funny.
an electric car. I know, right? I drive an electric car. I recycle. I be trying to upcycle type stuff all of a sudden. There's numerous things that I do, and this is not, and it's interesting, but like you said, your personal ecological niche, because I never went at it from the standpoint of I've got to save the planet. Never went from that standpoint. Not at all.
Mhm.
Like we gotta save the animals. Didn't go from that standpoint. Not at all. um Not at all. That came from parts of me trying to work on myself, like, oh, I want to be healthy. I want to be, I want to watch out what I'm eating. I'm figuring out that all these foods we're putting in our body, the process and how they treat the animals that we may eat are like crazy, and they're pumping them full of stuff. And I'm like,
Right.
and I'm looking at my diet. So you start becoming more aware of stuff. So I'm like, let me shift, right? So I start making little shifts, and I'm at the point now where I'm like cooking vegan food, right? And I can do it so well at this point where you couldn't tell if it was actual meat or not, right? It's pretty
Mm.
dope. And it's not processed. I can make it at the house. It's good. Mushrooms, shout out to mushrooms.
Mhm.
But and even with the electric car, it was about I'm getting a discount. This is my self-preservation. I'm getting a discount
Yep.
for this. So let me try this out. And then I was like, oh, by the way, I'm actually helping the planet. Oh my goodness. Like there are these things, like you just said, this personal niche where like because I keep doing the work, it seems to be coming back around to now it's not just about me. Now it's affecting like the earth in a healthy way. And now I'm like way more conscious of
Yeah.
it. I'm like, oh, what am I using? Am I using too much of it? Should I be sharing that? How does this affect this? Oh, maybe I shouldn't throw that away, or maybe I should reuse that, bro. It's energy, but now I'm so aware of it that it's like I have to constantly grow. And being with you and Chelsea in a car riding and then us together, yeah, I learned so much. I'd be like, oh, okay, okay, I could do that better. All right.
Mm,
Note taken, better for the earth and myself and community. All right, didn't know that beforehand. Note taken.
mm,
So man, I appreciate that learning from you. I really do.
mm,
Because it's involved in a lot of different ways. Like, man, since I came back, you probably even know, but just being in tune and in touch with nature so much more. So
mm.
I have another question. How did you get to this point? How did you get here? Like
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the,
yeah. Mm.
the Enneagram in
Um,
nature, yeah.
well, uh, kind of, kind of late actually. I mean, I wasn't
It's
super in
not that
tune with
late, bro.
nature as a kid. Well, I know, but like you might,
You-
someone who meets me now, they might think
Yeah.
like I went to summer camp and I loved it and I was outside all the time and I was one of those kids who just, played with squirrels all day. And that's, I don't know if they're kids like that, but I wasn't. I kind of disliked all that stuff. My dad would always try to get me to do it, but I never really liked to. I was lazy about going hiking. They sent me to summer camp a couple times and I didn't really like it. Ironically, I'd probably love it now. So it took a while for that to happen. Enneagram came in when I was around in high school. As I've talked elsewhere, I learned it from my mom, and I felt very called to learn that right after graduating, because it was the 2016 election, and I felt like, wow, I have to do something worthwhile to, affect consciousness because this stuff is crazy. So I'm gonna do what I can.
Yes.
Um, and the nature piece was coming in around the same time. I did a couple of retreats with the Animas Valley Institute when I was like 20, 21. I found that to be really powerful, really transformative. That's when I first started to learn these concepts of how to do inner work practices in communication with the landscape. So at Enneagram trainings, we do things like repeating questions and monologues with other humans. And in Animus Valley retreats, you do those things with other humans, but then you also go and have monologues and these practices where you're literally communicating with other than human entities. And it's a stretch out of your comfort zone at first, but as soon as you have an experience of that affecting you, it's like, whoa, okay, there is something huge here that I am just scratching the surface of. So I had that breakthrough pretty early. I actually had that right before going to the Enneagram training. And then when I went to the Enneagram training, it was amazing, but it was missing that whole dimension that I knew there was this whole world that I'd just been introduced to that was completely absent from this other one. And I was like, oh, why? These would go together so well. I was frustrated a little bit at the Animus Valley because people didn't know the Enneagram and I felt like it would speed a lot of their things up. The Enneagram is really good at being specific about our ego and what stops us from connecting with nature or God or anything with presence is our type. So I'm really hoping for some cross pollination between these different worlds. Enneagram needs to make its way into eco psychology circles and Animus Valley circles, things like that. And those nature practices have to make their way into the Enneagram circles. Um, so that's kind of how it came together. And in the few years since then, I've been deepening on both sides, continuing my Enneagram training and getting into teaching, and also starting to take classes at the Primitive Skills School in Maine, which just opened up many other doors within that nature world. Like I knew there was potential here, and now I'm learning about how, because that comes from a lineage from Lakota and Apache wisdom in the United States, and how real humans lived on the land that I now occupy as a white person who wants to connect here. That's really that's been adding a whole new layer of interest and conviction to what I've been doing.
Man. I I love that. I didn't know that your story was like that. I didn't know you got the deepening or the awakening in nature first, and then you learned the Enneagram. Because I know you
I,
come from a long Enneagram trend, like
I learned the Enneagram
lineage.
first in high school. My first workshop was in Animas Valley, and I did that before the Enneagram Institute training. Yeah,
Got it.
so I kind of got to go into both worlds. It was like a chicken and egg situation. You know, I had Enneagram knowledge going into Animus, and I'm like, these people need this. And then I went to Enneagram after that. I'm like, oh, these people need this. Eh, right. And so now my mission is I'm gonna help these people get what they need, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. So some of the other areas that I'm exploring as well that are conscious based, I'm like, man, if y'all knew the Enneagram, gosh, you could pinpoint some stuff and knock it out quick. Cause this other part that you're crushing it here, but the Enneagram would be like that missing link. And at the same time, looking in our Enneagram communities,
Hmm.
we know that there's missing links to it. And I think that biggest piece you're talking about is nature. Man, there's something so powerful about it. Um, I literally, I don't know what you think about this. I do wonder what you think. So I bought a grounding mat, um, simply because I was like, if I'm in the office and I'm working, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, and say, for instance, I didn't make time to go outside, right?
Hmm.
Because there's always, it's my decision, but I didn't make time to go outside. I want something to connect me with hopefully the earth's energy,
Hmm.
and being able. So I bought a grounding mat, and I absolutely love the thing. But I
Hmm.
don't. Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you ever tried one or anything?
I don't know much about grounding mats, no, but
Okay.
I mean, if I don't make time to go outside before a session, um, I usually sit with my houseplants or I sit looking out the window, like up at the sky, and I offer a little prayer there. That's my way of just, checking in, reminding myself I'm part of something bigger than
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people listening who are getting a little curious now because they've never really probably thought about overlapping the importance of nature and their inner work from the Enneagram, what are some practices that they could start with that would help them to start to fold in nature into their own inner work?
Hmm. Yeah, well, so if you're someone who just enjoys being outside, I can offer you all something right off the bat, which is take the same orientation that um, the original Christian monks who were studying the Enneagram Passions were. They were studying what took us out of communion with God, right? What sabotages my practice? When do I lose that sense of presence with the divine? So if I'm out on a walk or on a wander or I'm camping or hiking, what takes me out of being there as a self-observation practice of my type? So for example, is it anticipating what I'm going to eat for dinner? Um, is it, in my sixness, there's a lot of stuff that can go on. Sometimes it's just really quick thoughts that just I'm not paying attention to anything except trying to cover certain bases or whatever it is. Or um, it'll be kind of the paranoia level of the six. And I'm like, is there someone out here to like get me? And then there isn't. It's just my hyperactive, you know, sixness there. So that's taking me out of being here. I miss what's around me. Um, if I'm an eight, one of the words for the fixation in the eight is like objectifying one of them. So how am I just moving through this place as a bunch of objects? Is the hike just something to conquer or get on top of? Or from a three orientation, is it something to achieve or get done? Um, if I'm a two, am I able to actually go out and do that by myself and just be with my own being in nature without tending to anybody else? Like, can I take that time for myself? It's a great field for our existing self-observation practices. And I find it powerful because when I'm outside, usually there's a very strong reason to want to be present, right? It's
Mm.
like, I don't want to miss this. So I have that support to help me with that. Um, and I have additional specific practices I could offer each type, but that's kind of the underlying how it works on one side of it.
Yeah. So, what are some of those offerings that you do have, like as a coach, as programs? What are some things that you do that people who are fascinated, interested, can come like look at and then potentially join for sure? Because I think people definitely should. Ben is an incredible teacher, y'all. Like seriously, he's a beast. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, we have I'm doing some retreats. That's what I'm most excited about the next few months. So there's a 1 day virtual retreat in November that I'm doing with my colleague Stephanie Spencer, who also does Enneagram and nature work in a different way. She focuses on visualization um, and 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 imagery, which for the record is also one of our atrophied
Hmm.
windows of knowing is the
Yes.
imagination. So she and I are doing a 1 day virtual workshop in November, and I took a virtual workshop with Animus Valley a few years ago during COVID, and it worked really well. The idea is like you come together in this virtual space, but there are long chunks of time throughout the workshop where we invite you to go out on the land where you live with a practice based on, we're probably going to be doing it based on centers, um, to go and do a practice related to that center and then come back to the group and report on what happened. And you get the benefit of, if you're zooming in from your house, you have an opportunity to connect in a deep way with the land that you live on. Maybe it's your own backyard, maybe it's the woods around you, maybe it's the trees on the city street, or just like the sky and the clouds. So I have that in November. You and Chelsea and I are doing the B.I.G retreat next year. You can get on the wait list for that. We've already opened it. It's already booked. Memorial Day 2025. This will be a part of, integrating nature with these other aspects of the Enneagram. Um, I also work as a coach, and if you want to be up to date on what I'm offering, I have some things in the works that haven't been announced yet, but you can go to my website and get on the newsletter so you can hear about it.
Awesome. We'll make sure those are all definitely in the show notes. One part I think you mentioned, and I don't know if you got to this point of like people who um, practical things people can do
Hmm.
that may not be super nature people. Because you mentioned one right before I asked you the question about sometimes you can talk to your plant, sometimes you can do a prayer
Hmm.
with a plant, sometimes you can. I mean, I got a freaking grounding mat, but there's things that you can do to start um, those practices of like integrating nature into what you do,
Yeah.
because it's man it's profound.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're just touching the cusp of it when we look at things and like, oh, there's so much more here. Like you have like there's such a intelligence, that's the best way I know how to say it, in
Hmm.
nature.
Hmm.
And nature really shows us how life should go, the
Right.
processes of life.
Right.
And I think as humans, we always try to um, co-op, create our own, um, manipulate the process a lot of different ways. And there's always side effects, AKA, if we think about it from the standpoint of literally medicine, like they make
Hmm.
medicine based off of plants,
Yes.
medicinal plants. And
Yes.
then when they put the commercial on, they say, "These are the side effects," and they give you 86 different items of the side effects, when there's something in nature that can do the exact same thing without the side effects being there.
Yeah.
So, ah, we gotta get back, man.
Yeah. And if I, yeah, a part of that was asking a question of what are some other practical ways people can get started, right?
Yeah, that just pops in your
Yeah.
head, yeah, because I want people to jump in and
Sure.
get to
Uh,
it.
so two separate things popped up. One is just as part of a morning ritual, just step outside. Even if it's stepping outside and taking a few breaths consciously, like, okay, my breath is my interface with the world. Can I go get some fresh air and just acknowledge that I'm part of this huge system? That can change my orientation. That's the first thing I try to do in the morning. Before I do my meditation, I just step outside. And in my case, I go and put a hand on the tree in my driveway. I say out loud, "Good morning. Um, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching over me." Just remembering that my acts throughout the day are in service to something beyond myself. Um, the other fun thing you can try, so if you want to play with this opening to another consciousness thing and maybe reawakening some of our atrophied capacity, a powerful step to take is crossing a threshold when you go on a hike or on some kind of nature excursion. And it's a tool to get your ego on board. Um, a threshold in a journey is it's when we cross over into a different stage of something, right? So um, when if say I'm going on a walk in the woods, when I get to the boundary between the road and the woods, I might stop, and the threshold intention that I say out loud is I am crossing into a different reality for the duration of this walk where the plants and the animals and everything else can communicate with me and I understand what they're saying. Just for the walk, I don't need to take that on as all the time, but for the walk, I'm crossing over into this where things that I didn't think were possible become possible. And then I go for my walk, and when I come back, I cross over the threshold and I return to my regular modern human life. But what that does is it gives my ego a little bit of permission to just start letting go of how it thinks reality is. And maybe something could happen when I get a little bit of distance from there. But I don't have to take the full step of believing something that I've been conditioned my whole life to not believe.
Mm.
You might
Man,
be
that's deep.
surprised.
Yeah, people will be surprised if I encourage everyone to actually give these a shot. It's it's profound. Like it's if you haven't had an experience similar, it's hard for us to just say like, "Oh, trust me." Give it a shot. You'll be shocked what will come from it.
Mhm.
But man, as I dabble more and more into that space of learning those, I would say, unique parts of us that are already built in, but you say, like you said, atrophied.
Yeah.
Man, it is incredible. Like it's other. It feels like it's otherworldly, but it's still clearly here.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
that
can give
different
an
level of
example.
consciousness.
Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
Well,
No,
just an
go.
example for something that's happened for me. A year, yeah, a year ago, I was at an Animas Valley retreat and I had an experience with a river where I was reminded of this title that I'm meant to take on for a while, which is speaker. Um, but I don't necessarily share this with everyone, but it's out there now. Uh, and right, it was this experience with a brook, and I can't really explain exactly what happened there, except that it was I was being invited into something, like offered something by the world and saying, you can accept this or not. And if you say yes, things are going to change. And I had to say yes, felt like, and I took that on. And a month later, I was at the IEA conference, the International Enneagram Association conference in San Francisco, and there was a moment during a presentation with a leading speaker where I felt this tremor that I needed to speak, and I was remembering that there was this gift from the river, and I stood up and I spoke a challenging question to this leader in the field. Um, and I'm not going to say names here, but another significant leader who was there heard me and then came up to me afterward and was like, I want to mentor you
Mm,
because of what you said. And to me, that whole experience was a gift from that moment with the brook. Like I opted to take this on based on what was offered to me out there. It had this, immediate or unexpected but profound payoff. I don't know if that's the word I really like, but it resulted in something surprising and wonderful that has really supported me in the past year. And this person has been mentoring me for the past year, and it's been really powerful. And it just came out of me deciding to trust this wisdom that came from somewhere outside of myself, and to honor that and to step into it. And that's what I mean by magic. And that's what I hope for people who start to do this, is things like that will happen to you more and more often, the more
Yes.
we're open to it.
Yes. And what I love about the intertwinement of what you're talking about with understanding nature, being more open to what actually is there, and what it has to, like you said, I don't know about offer us, but to share with us.
Right.
Um, but also with the Enneagram, because what happens is the Enneagram helps us not to allow our ego to overtake that,
Yes.
because that is what I think, like you're talking about, that missing piece sometimes in some different other communities, not just nature communities, but like other communities. They have this beautiful piece of something that they've discovered because they allow themselves to be in tuned with it. But we'd have to be careful. The ego will easily morph itself to take that and then
Yeah.
use it in an egoic way. And so this the work you're doing is so important. I just wanted to share that the work you're doing is so important, on so many different levels. And I really think about it really from a not just consciousness inner work, but a health perspective.
Mm.
Like our health is like us being conscious about like what is around us, what we put in our bodies, what we are connected to, not connected to, understanding how nature works, how our bodies work with nature and not with it, to
Hmm.
me is built like almost the foundation to me when you get beyond, not beyond, but underneath the spiritual is health. It is
Yeah.
health, man.
Yeah.
Gosh. And
Absolutely.
healing. Yeah, and healing. So, we're missing so much of that when we are not in tune with nature. Like we're missing a lot of healing and a lot of health for us.
And it's draining to go against our true wiring.
Yes.
Like I'm literally pushing against nature and trying to make that work. So of course I'm stressed and tired all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and just wrapping this up, I always ask these questions. I want to know
Mm.
kind of what a person is working on inner work wise. So you personally, something you would want to share. What at this current stage of your inner work are you um kind of diving into or focusing on at this point? What's something you're
Mm.
personally working on?
Actually, this is hot off the press, I guess, but I am um joining the Tara Mandala Tibetan Buddhist organization, which was
Oh,
founded by a woman named Lama Tsultrim, who was one of the first American women ordained as a Tibetan nun. She came back and founded this organization, and my mentor is part of it. And I'd had a fascination with Tibetan spirituality for a long time. But recently, I've been feeling like I have all these, um, different threads of inner work I've been following, but I really want to be part of a tradition. I grew up atheist. I don't have a faith tradition. The Enneagram is not a faith tradition. It's a inner work practice. It's a everyday thing, but it's not a spiritual path. There isn't a lineage of um well, it's not a lineage in the same way.
right,
So
right.
this kind of I was really drawn to this like robust spiritual path that's based in something that I'd had a fascination with since a kid. So I am signing up for that, and I'll be taking workshops with them throughout the year. I'm meeting with a mentor, which is called a Kalyana Mitra, tomorrow, to establish a really solid spiritual anchor that I feel is a missing piece in my work so far. So you're one of the first people
Mm.
to hear that.
Let's go, man. Thank you for sharing that. Does this path, are you becoming a monk?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
No, that's
okay.
a great question. No, it's just it's a layperson path.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, and even I really like this tradition in particular because when they do their retreats on the land, it's very ecologically based. They're always starting off with offers
Mm.
of gratitude and honoring, and I think they work in herbalism in some ways, especially on their land where they are in person. And their teachers are more, it's more like um, they don't have to renounce their
Gotcha.
marriage or anything like that. So the teachers there are married, but they're still in the lineage. So it's designed for, I mean, it's in the United States and it's designed for, everyday people to have a spiritual anchor without having to
Mm.
go be a monk. And I'll be
Oh,
doing a mix of virtual and in-person stuff with them.
oh, that's amazing, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. Before I went to Egypt, I thought about being a monk. Then I went to a monastery, and it changed my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I
Then I
I
was
definitely don't
like,
want to be a monk, but
no, I don't think that's for me. Not this lifetime. Nope, no, no, mm-mm.
mhm.
But there's some things I love about it. Awesome. Okay, and another question: what is something you would offer? I would say as wisdom or as just an offering of, I guess, guidance or help along the journey for people doing inner work. And particularly, I guess, because this is based, our episode's based in nature, what is maybe a nugget or two that you would offer people on this journey when it comes to integrating nature into their walk?
Mm. I'd say it's pretty similar to what I opened up with, which is that it's a lot more accessible than you might think. Um, and that every little piece counts. I think one thing we didn't really talk about directly, but is often a part of these conversations, is that humans are part of nature. Like you're not actually not nature in some way. It's just that's how we're oriented to think. So it's interesting as I sit and like visualize the answer to that question. What I'm just seeing is someone walking along a suburban sidewalk and noticing, like really noticing the other beings that are there. Um, the plants and the trees that were planted on the street to make it beautiful actually become beings instead of just set dressing. The dandelions that you're walking by aren't just weeds, they're there for a reason, not to mention their food and medicine. Um, the sky overhead, what you can read, like learning to sense, realizing what you do know, like, oh, I can tell it's going to rain in a few hours. How do I know that? Um, yeah, it's a lot closer than you realize. And it just takes a little bit of shifting into, okay, this is a capacity that I literally evolved to have. And it's right here if I'm willing to welcome it in.
Absolutely love that. Ben, man, thank you for being on. This
Hmm.
is always good. Really good friend. All your links will be in the show notes. People, go check out what Ben is doing. Join his programs. Join his retreats. Me and Chelsea always joke this man is like Russ Hudson 2.0 in a way because of how he teaches and shares, which is always funny. But he's absolutely Ben. He's absolutely Ben
Hmm.
Campbell. Um, so
Yeah.
absolutely incredible, man. Thank you for being on here. Yeah, just everybody go check out this because it is extremely important. And it's not just, like you said, once again, it's not just individual work.
Hmm.
Like
Right. Right.
I, our level of consciousness, not just about our personal being, but in our collective, and not just our collective human beings, but our collective as in the nature and earth that we exist upon, is detrimental. Like it's so important to like us making sure that we somehow working together can do our best to honor the earth we live on,
Hmm.
despite all the stuff that it's going through right now, and despite all the things that we are putting into the earth and things that have already been built. We have a collective power as people who do inner work that, man, we
Yeah.
become conscious about nature too. We can do some amazing and powerful things, but we need to bring that that awareness back into our consciousness and then be able to work with each other in it. So thank you,
Beautiful.
bro. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Milton. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Great to
So
be here.
oh yeah. So check out everything in the show notes, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode. Remember, do it for the Enneagram, not Instagram, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one. Bye.